Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about starting up with Illustrator. So Adobe Illustrator 2021, you'll come up with the new document dialog box when you open up the application. And Adobe Illustrator can work in different modalities from mobile to web, print, film, video, and art and illustration, which is its primary function is art and illustration or working for print. Under each one of these tabs, we'll give you various number of presets. This is specific to the paper size you're working in or the medium that you're working in. So you can see that there's different sizes right here. They also give you a number of templates at the bottom, and the templates come in handy. But if you're a designer, I think the best thing you want to do is not use the templates and actually create something from scratch and have that full creative ability from the beginning. Today I want to use the tabloid size sheet of paper right here. And on the right side, you can see the measurements for the documents. Standard is going to be in points, but you can quickly change it to different units of measurement, just opening the side menu right here. I want to leave it to inches because it's the most effective for me. And we'll talk about bleeds later. I'm not going to set it right now. And there's color mode. Depending on your final destination, if it's going to be printed, you'd work in CMYK. If you're going to just only work in electronic medium or a project or a tablet or handheld, or if it's only going to be electronic, I suggest working RGB. But by standard, I usually work with CMYK and then translate it later if I need to an RGB format. And then we're going to leave the high raster effects applied. That way you get the highest quality out of the file. And so we have a 11 by 17 tabloid, and we're going to say OK and create. Now when you open up Illustrator, there's a number of essential tools that you would need, and all your windows or tools will be available right here under the Windows menu. If you see the checkbox, that means that they're showing somewhere on the desktop. And then if you don't see it, you just click it and then it will become active, like that one. So the properties and the transform tool are probably the key tools that you would probably want to use today. And also they have rulers. I like to have my rulers on so I know where I'm at on the document at all times. It's also great for measuring. Illustrator is a very precise tool, so having that ruler available is very handy, and you can find that under the view menu. Scroll all the way down to here. It says rulers. It says show rulers. Now another handy thing to have or to utilize, and I want to zoom in real quick. I also have the little function here that shows you what keyboard commands I'm using here. I'm routinely using my left hand to activate these keyboard commands, like cut and paste, or but I use it also to move around and navigate through different tools, so that way you can see what I'm doing. What also comes in handy during layout or illustration is guidelines. And if you go into the ruler, left click, hold the click, and then pull out a guideline. I want to put it right here at the 3-inch mark, and then put another one down here at the 3-inch mark. And I can systematically do this throughout the entire document, and be able to have like little sections of laid out in the document. I'm just going to create just 4, so you can kind of see what I'm doing here. And there's that. I want to zoom out a little bit. And then maybe I'll just put another one over here just to make 9 sections. And if I want to be really precise about things, I could, and make it really even, and just put and just use a little calculator to divide the math a little bit and know where to place it. If you look at the properties here, I can highlight the one here, and it tells me where it's laying on the X and Y coordinates, so that we can put things accurately. And again, that goes into the thousandths of an inch for measurements, but we don't need to get that specific today. Now the primary tool we're going to talk about today is the pen tool. Oh, let me pull out my artboard tool real quick so I can show you what that looks like. I usually have a lot of my tools collapsed just for desktop efficiency. I can open it up here and I can see all my typography tools, my align tools, my pathfinders. I also have on the right side artboards. This application is unlike InDesign or Microsoft Word or Google Docs. They don't use pages in Illustrator, use artboards. So it's not, you have to kind of rephrase that a little bit. So it's like almost a sheet of paper. If you create another artboard by pushing the plus sign here, the new artboard will be the same size as the other artboard. You can see now 2 appear instead of 1. But we'll work with more of the artboards a little bit later, more in detail. But I can add number of different artboards, and it falls in line with the guidelines, so you can always help. It always automatically draws the guidelines for you. So I have 3 artboards. You have to highlight which one you want to work with, and then there's artboard number 1, and it kind of shows you where you're at. And then so we're going to work mostly with the pen tool today, because that's probably the most effective tool. Illustrator is a very unique application that it's really about doing illustrations, and it's really doing very modern or simplified illustrations. A lot of logos are made with Illustrator, and so we're going to kind of work with that. I'm going to go over here and go to this artboard here. I'll just take the middle in the middle, because I think I want to do a demonstration which doesn't really require a lot of guidelines. Now I'm just going to delete my guidelines real quick here. Oops. Now the pen tool, a couple of things I think about the pen tool is that think about a shape. A shape by definition is an enclosed space. So that means a square, circle, fully enclosed, or full lines all the way around makes it enclosed. So you want to keep that in mind. The pen tool technically can draw 2 ways at the beginning. It can either draw this shape as a straight line, which I like to do. You can actually bend the line, at a later point, or you can draw the opposite, which is draw the line curved first and then work your way around. I find that to tend to be a little tedious sometimes. So I want to take my hand, and you can follow along too, and just kind of imagine your hand is in different shapes, at different parts. Okay, so you have like the palm of your hand, which is kind of like a square-ish, and then you have the fingers, which are all rectangle. So I'm going to start off and kind of just trace my hand, and what's going to do is going to drop anchor points. So I'll start off at the bottom here, which is going to be my left hand, and it drops an anchor point. And if you see here, oops, let me back up real quick because I forgot to tell you one thing. When you pick up your pen tool, there are 2 things that you want to keep in mind here. I want to zoom in real quick so you can see closely. This is called the stroke and the fill. This is the stroke, which is a little box as an outline, and then this is the fill, which is the solid box with the and it shows that there's no stroke and no fill. So you won't be able to see the line if you put it down on the paper. So I'm going to change the stroke just to black so that I can see what the outline looks like. Now I can get this going. So you always want to look at the stroke and fill, because you have to tell the pen what to do. So again, I want to start with my left hand, start on the outside of my left hand, and just kind of plot some lines down. And here comes my pinky, which is kind of a rectangle. And here comes my other digit. Now it looks a little rough. That's okay, because we're going to make curves on it later. Here's my index finger. Now the great thing about illustrations is that it allows the illustrator to kind of interpret what the world looks like, and it doesn't have to be realistic. It just has to have the general shape. Speaking of shapes, so we have the general shape of my hand, but it's not a closed shape. If I were to zoom in just a little bit here, if you were to take this pen and come back to this starting point, you see the pen just popped up a little circle in the lower right corner. That indicates that it wants to close the shape. So you want to close the shape at all times. There. Now, the real work of the pen tool comes in the submenu here. If you go back to the pen tool, you'll see that there's a couple of different options right here. I want to say anchor point tool. So basically, each one of these points that you created is known as an anchor point. So that's an anchor point, and this is an anchor point, and that's between each click. Okay. Now, if I take this anchor point right here, if I pull this anchor point by left clicking on top of the anchor point and holding the click, so left click and hold, and then I slightly pull on it, you see that the line that you're working with starts to curve. And you also see two additional lines. I'm going to let go. These are called the handles or the Bezier tool. This allows you to be able to grab this side here, and then if you're pulling on the line or pushing it in different directions, you see that the line changes to curve, and based on the anchor point. So it doesn't affect the other lines. You can see I can make this part a little bit thinner if I want, or if I want to widen it a little bit. And then the key thing is that you don't want to cross lines, because if you cross lines like this, then you get something that's kind of cool, but ultimately gives indication to all designers and illustrators that you're not necessarily that functional with the tool yet. You do a little bit more work to become comfortable with it. And then I can delete. If I tap on it, it'll release the line. And this takes a little bit of getting used to of making lines and pulling lines. And the thing is, it doesn't have to be perfect. That's the great thing about illustrations. As long as the interpretation's there, you can understand what it looks like. Another key thing that you don't want to do is you don't want to have one anchor point doing all the work for the curve. See here? So there's not any anchor point or control arms on this side. So what I want to be able to do is actually kind of control both sides of the anchor point. And then now this is what happens when the arm gets a little too much load and it starts to point out a little bit. And you want to be able to have anchor points that kind of control both sides of the line. And then you just work your way around. Okay. Now another aspect of this tool, and I'm not going to finish up all the way because I just want to give you the demo so you can go and practice yourself. And this tool does take a lot of practice. It's one of those functional things like playing a musical instrument. You're playing a visual instrument, and you got to practice a little bit. And the other thing I want to point out to you in this tool is that, oops, sorry, I'll have to fix that later. Okay. Is that there are a couple things that you can also do here is that we have two selection tools. There's one that's called the selection tool, which is the common one that we're familiar with in all applications. And then there's the one that has the outline of the selection arrow, and it's called the direct selection tool. Now, direct selection tool is a very handy tool to have because it allows you to come in here and pick up the point and move the point in anywhere you want to put it. So if I want my middle finger to be a little bit shorter, I can. And if you actually pick up 2 points and select 2 points, and this is the way you select 2 points is click one, hold down the shift key, click the second one, and so it gives you multiple selections. You can actually move the entire finger. So if I want to do it this way, I can move it out that direction, or if I want to do this direction, I can move over here. And again, you have a lot of flexibility in converting things. And the other part I want to add to you here is that let me see if I can find it real quick. Okay. And so the idea is you're going to kind of work your way around and kind of play with it a little bit on adding and subtracting, how you want to make the illustration look. And this is where I also kind of feel that you should always duplicate things. So sometimes what I do is that in order to duplicate an artboard, I can actually just grab the artboard down here and say duplicate, and then there's another copy of the artboard right here. And then sometimes I would rename it, or if I want to tuck it back in line, put it back here. I also do suggest that you draw large, because having these anchor points on a small little 2x2 little 2-inch by 2-inch drawing is really hard to control. If you make it large, you have a lot more flexibility to control those anchor points. So there you have the introduction of how to use anchor points and to kind of start a drawing. Again, it's one of those tools that requires a lot of practice and just kind of trial and error. But again, if you do the variations and duplicate your artboard, then we'll be able to see how you progress and grow, and see how variations work if you make something tall or small or big or wide, or however you envision it. It's good to have those variations, because in that way you can, have a reference point on how the work progressed. If you have any questions, email me. Thanks.